Have you ever watched someone being judged before they even had a chance to speak? Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and if you believe that kindness still matters in this world, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Because today, E-Story will remind you that what's inside a person is far more powerful than what others choose to see. It all began on an ordinary Monday morning in the glass heart of the city, a tall, silver building that gleamed like success itself. Behind its mirrored doors was Hendrix Global, a company known for its perfection, prestige, and people who looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. But that morning, a woman walked through its lobby who didn't quite fit their picture of perfection. Her name was Ava Johnson. She was 35, a widow, and a mother raising a teenage son on her own. Once she had worked as a nurse. Steady hands, calm voice, a quiet strength that helped others through their worst days. But the hospital where she worked had closed, and the world didn't care much for old skills that couldn't be wrapped in corporate polish. She needed a job, any job that would keep a roof over her son's head. So, wearing her only clean suit, faded at the edges but pressed with care, Ava arrived at Hendrix Global for a job interview. She took a deep breath before stepping inside, whispering a little prayer under her breath. Just give me a chance. The air inside was cold, the kind that makes you aware of every wrinkle, every imperfection. Behind the front desk sat a young woman with perfect hair and a sharper tongue. Her eyes moved up and down Ava's figure, judging her shoes, her skin, her worn-out handbag. "You're probably looking for the first floor," the receptionist said with a smirk. "We're not hiring cleaning staff up here." For a second, the words hit Ava like a slap, but she didn't flinch. She just smiled softly and said, "No, I'm here for an interview." The receptionist blinked, surprised by the calm in her voice. The room went silent. A few young applicants waiting nearby looked up from their phones, smirking as if watching a scene they'd seen too many times before. But Ava didn't let her eyes drop. She stood tall, her dignity the only armor she had left. Minutes passed before a door opened and a woman in a navy blue suit called her name. "Miss Johnson, follow me." The woman was Haley Watson, the head of human resources. Her handshake was brief and cold, her smile practiced. She led Ava into a bright office filled with certificates and framed photos of company events. The walls seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here." Haley sat behind her desk and opened a file, flipping through Ava's resume with a look of polite boredom. "I see you worked in healthcare," she began, her tone clipped. "But this is a corporate environment. We're looking for someone who understands our culture." Ava nodded, her voice steady. "I understand. I may not come from your world, but I know what it means to work hard and care for people. I learn quickly." Haley gave a thin smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "It's not just about working hard, Miss Johnson. It's about fitting in." Ava folded her hands in her lap, the weight of every rejection pressing on her shoulders, but she kept her gaze kind. "I don't know how to pretend to be someone else, ma'am. I just know how to do my best." There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence that filled the room like static. Haley cleared her throat. "Well, thank you for coming in. We'll be in touch." It was the corporate phrase that really meant you'll never hear from us again. Ava rose, thanked her for the opportunity, and walked out. As the door closed behind her, she heard soft laughter. Two voices, light and dismissive. She didn't turn around. She just walked down the long hallway, each step echoing against the polished floor, her resume left behind on the corner of the desk, half slipping toward the trash bin. Outside, the city had turned gray. The rain had started to fall, thin and cold, soaking through her coat. Ava pulled it tighter around her and kept walking, her shoes splashing through puddles. People hurried past her, faces hidden under umbrellas, eyes fixed on their own worlds. Nobody noticed the woman who had once saved lives, who had comforted the dying, who had stayed calm through storms. Now she was just another name on a rejected resume. As she reached the bus stop, she looked up at the towering skyline, the same buildings that seemed to whisper that she wasn't enough. She sighed, whispering to herself, "I used to help people. I used to matter. But maybe that doesn't count anymore." For a moment she closed her eyes. The memory of her son's laughter flashed in her mind, the way he hugged her before school saying, "Don't worry, Mom, you always find a way." That thought kept her standing there in the rain, her heart heavy but unbroken. She didn't know that somewhere above those clouds, fate was already watching her, quietly setting the stage for a twist she could never have imagined. Because sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones destiny refuses to forget. And Ava Johnson was about to find out that kindness, even when unnoticed, never truly goes unrewarded. The next morning, Ava opened her email and saw a single new message. It was short, cold, and familiar. "Thank you for your time. We have selected another candidate." No signature, no warmth, just another polite rejection in a world that seemed to have no place for her anymore. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then smiled softly, though her heart ached. She whispered to herself, "It's fine. I'll find something else." She put on her worn gray coat and headed to the small corner cafe where she sometimes worked part-time, a quiet place that smelled of coffee, cinnamon, and tired dreams. The cafe wasn't much, but it paid just enough to keep food on the table and the lights on. The owner let her take extra shifts when she could, and Ava was grateful for every hour. That day, she stood behind the counter, pouring coffee for strangers who never really looked at her. To them, she was just part of the background, another face in the rhythm of their busy mornings. She moved with quiet grace, cleaning tables, refilling cups, her mind somewhere far away, thinking about rent, groceries, and her son's growing feet that always seemed to need new shoes. As she worked, a television mounted on the wall played the morning news. The words caught her attention. "Richard Hendricks, CEO of Hendricks Global, returns home after his daughter's near-fatal accident." Ava glanced up. The screen showed a man stepping out of a hospital surrounded by reporters. There was something about his face, strong, composed, with sadness beneath the surface, that stirred something deep in her memory. She couldn't place it, so she looked away, thinking it must have been someone she'd seen on television before. She had no idea how that moment would circle back to her life so soon. Later that afternoon, as the rain began to fall outside, the bell above the cafe door rang. A man walked in wearing a dark gray suit, his tie slightly loosened, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. His presence was quiet but commanding, the kind that made people look twice without knowing why. Ava recognized him immediately from the news. The same man, Richard Hendricks, the CEO of the company that had rejected her just a day earlier. For a brief moment she froze. She wondered if he'd remember her from the interview, but of course he hadn't been there. He was a man of wealth and decisions far above her world. Still, she offered him the same warm smile she gave every customer. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you?" He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and something flickered in them. Curiosity, maybe recognition. "A black coffee," he said quietly. She nodded and turned to prepare it, her hands steady, though her heart raced for reasons she couldn't explain. When she set the cup before him, he didn't look away. His gaze lingered, searching her face as if trying to find a lost memory. "I'm sorry," he said after a pause, "but you look familiar. Have we met before?" Ava smiled, a little shyly. "No, sir, I don't think so. I just work here sometimes." He nodded, but his eyes still carried that uncertain look, like a man trying to piece together a puzzle he didn't know existed. "Strange," he murmured. "You remind me of someone." She smiled again, not knowing what else to say, and stepped away to help another customer. He sat there for a while, sipping his coffee in silence, lost in thought. There was something peaceful about her, he noticed, something genuine, unpolished but real, an honesty he rarely saw in the people who surrounded him every day. When he finally left, he nodded politely. "Thank you for the coffee." "You're welcome, sir," she replied softly. That was all, just a simple exchange, like hundreds before it. But for both of them, something had shifted. Later that evening, Richard returned home to his large, quiet house. The lights were dim, and the sound of soft music played in the background. His daughter Sophie sat on the couch surrounded by pillows and sketchbooks, Her leg was still bandaged and faint scars traced her arms, reminders of the accident that had nearly taken her life. When he walked in, her face brightened. "Hey, Dad." He smiled, his eyes softening. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," she said, then noticed the faraway look in his eyes. "You seem distracted." He sat beside her, exhaling. "I met someone today, a woman. She works at a cafe downtown. I don't know why, but she seemed familiar." Sophie tilted her head. "What did she look like?" "Black woman, maybe mid-30s, kind eyes. There was something about her that reminded me of peace," he said quietly. Sophie's eyes widened, her expression suddenly alive with realization. "Dad, wait. Where did you say you saw her?" "A small cafe near the hospital," he replied slowly, watching her reaction. Sophie's breath caught. "Dad, that's her." "That's the woman who helped me, the nurse from the accident." Richard froze. "What?" "It's her, I'm sure of it," Sophie said, tears forming in her eyes. "When the car hit me, before the ambulance came, she was there. I remember her voice. She held my hand and kept telling me to breathe. Everyone else just watched, but she stayed. She wouldn't let go." The memory crashed over him like a wave. He remembered standing outside the emergency room that night, his heart in pieces, hearing the paramedics say his daughter had been stabilized at the scene, thanks to an off-duty nurse who had stepped in before help arrived. He had never learned her name. Until now. The image in his mind sharpened, a woman kneeling on the pavement, rain pouring down, her hands steady, her voice calm. "Stay with me, sweetheart. You're going to be okay." It was Ava. He sat in silence, his chest tightening as realization sank in. The same woman his company had rejected, the one his staff had dismissed as unworthy, had once saved his daughter's life. The thought cut deep, gratitude tangled with shame. He had built an empire that prized image over humanity, and in doing so, he had turned away someone truly extraordinary. Sophie reached for his hand. "Dad, she didn't even know who you were. She just helped me." He swallowed hard, emotion thick in his throat. "And we turned her away," he whispered. That night, long after his daughter fell asleep, Richard sat alone in his study. He thought about Ava's quiet smile, her calm presence, her dignity despite everything. He realized how blind he had been, to the world, to people like her, to the truth that real strength often hides behind humility. For the first time in years, the powerful CEO felt small, human, and humbled. He knew what he had to do, because sometimes fate doesn't bring people together by chance. Sometimes it gives you a second chance to do what's right. And Richard Hendricks was about to make sure the woman who saved his daughter would never again be overlooked. The next morning, Richard Hendricks walked through the glass doors of his company with a quiet determination that turned every head in the lobby. He didn't greet anyone, didn't pause for the usual polite exchanges. There was something different in his stride, a stillness that spoke louder than anger ever could. When he reached the executive floor, Haley Watson was already there, perfectly dressed as always, her posture confident. She smiled politely. "Good morning, Mr. Hendricks. I didn't expect—" He interrupted her softly but firmly. "Mrs. Watson, bring me the list of applicants for the HR assistant position." She blinked, confused but obedient, and handed over the folder. He scanned the names quickly until his eyes stopped on one, Ava Johnson. The name seemed to glow on the page. "Tell me," he said evenly, "why wasn't she hired?" Haley hesitated. "Well, sir, her background didn't quite fit the position. Her experience is mostly medical, not administrative. And to be transparent, I wasn't sure she would match the corporate image we maintain here." Richard looked up slowly, his gaze steady, and for a long moment, he said nothing. Then his voice, low and calm, cut through the room. "Our image?" He took a step closer. "Our image is supposed to be people with integrity, people who care. That woman saved my daughter's life when no one else would even stop. And you turned her away because you couldn't see past a resume, or the color of her skin. Haley's face went pale. Sir, But he raised a hand gently, stopping her. You don't have to explain. The truth is clear. He closed the folder and set it on her desk with deliberate care. I built this company to stand for something. I won't allow it to become a place where kindness is treated like weakness. And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving her frozen in silence, her polished confidence cracking just slightly under the weight of her own reflection. Later that evening, the sky had softened into gold. Inside the little cafe on the corner, Ava was wiping down tables, humming quietly to herself. The day had been long but peaceful. She had accepted that life would find a way forward, even if it didn't look the way she once imagined. The bell above the door rang. When she looked up, her breath caught for a moment. Standing there was the man from the day before, the same man from the news, and beside him, a teenage girl with bright, curious eyes. The girl's face lit up the instant she saw Ava. You, she exclaimed, running up to her with a joy that filled the room. Do you remember me? Ava smiled, warmth flooding her face. Of course I do, sweetheart. How are you feeling? So much better, Sophie said, her voice trembling with excitement. Dad told me what happened, that you didn't even know us and still helped me. You stayed with me until the ambulance came. I'll never forget you. Ava's eyes softened. I'm just happy you're okay. Richard stepped forward then, his expression different this time, humble, grateful, and deeply human. Miss Johnson, he began quietly, I owe you more than words can say. You saved my daughter's life and the most precious thing I have, and I didn't even know it until yesterday. She shook her head gently. You don't owe me anything, sir. I only did what anyone should do. But he smiled sadly. That's the thing. Not everyone would have done what you did, and certainly not with the grace you showed. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a white envelope. This, he said, placing it on the counter before her, is an official offer. From me, personally. The position at Hendrix Global is yours, not as a favor, not out of guilt, but because I need people like you on my team. People with heart. Ava hesitated, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the envelope. Her voice was soft but steady. Thank you, Mr. Hendrix, but I don't do what I do for recognition. He nodded, eyes glistening. I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. For a moment, the cafe was silent except for the quiet hum of the coffee machine. Sophie smiled up at Ava. You're the reason I'm still here, she said. Ava's eyes welled with tears, but her smile never faded. Then make the most of that, sweetheart. Live kindly. That's all I could ever want. Richard placed a gentle hand over his daughter's shoulder. Miss Johnson, he said softly, the world needs more people like you. And I promise, as long as I run my company, it will be a place where people are seen for who they are, not for what others expect them to be. She smiled through her tears. Then maybe kindness still has a place in this world. It always will, he replied. For a moment they simply stood there. 3 lives connected by fate, by grace, by the quiet strength of compassion. Ava finally accepted the envelope, her heart full but calm. I'll think about it, she said softly. Take all the time you need, Richard replied, smiling. You've already done more for me than anyone ever could. As they turned to leave, Sophie waved one last time, her voice bright. Goodbye, Miss Ava. Goodbye, sweetheart, she replied. And when the door closed behind them, Ava stood still for a long moment, holding the envelope against her chest. She didn't see it as an opportunity for success, but as proof that the world still had room for redemption. That evening, as the cafe lights dimmed and the streets glistened from rain, a gentle voice echoed, the voice of the story itself, speaking not just to Ava or Richard, but to everyone listening. Sometimes, the voice said, fate doesn't test our strength through storms, but through the quiet moments when we're asked to see beyond what's visible. True worth isn't written on paper or displayed in wealth. It lives in the choices we make when no one's watching. The music swelled softly, carrying the moral home like a whisper of truth. Because kindness isn't a skill, it's a decision, and those who live with compassion, even when the world overlooks them, are the ones who truly shine. The final words lingered, warm and resolute. Remember, never judge a person by what they wear, where they come from, or how much they own. Judge them by the light they bring into the lives of others. Then, as the story came to a close, the voice turned gently toward the viewers. If this story touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. Because sometimes one story, one act of kindness, can change everything.